For your viewing pleasure, this broadcast of the Municipal Council meeting of Alpena is made possible by the funding provided by the City of Alpena. Thank you for your generosity.
Good evening. Welcome to the Alpena City Council meeting of November 18th, 2019. Call the order, please.
Hess? Here. Johnson? Here. Nielsen?
Here.
Nowak?
Here.
And Walgora.
Here. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, any modifications to the agenda this evening? Approval of the minutes for regular session of November 4th, 2019. Any issues or changes? Citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items are allowed 5 minutes each to address your concerns. This is the only time during tonight's meeting you're allowed to address council, so if you'd like to, please come to the podium and state your name and address for our records. On the consent agenda this evening is bills to be allowed in the amount of $509,676.50.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Hess?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
And Walgora.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, presentations, announcements, proclamations, or hearings. So we're down to report of officers, and we have costs of voter turnout November 5th, 2019 election.
Okay. The cost for the November 5th city election totaled $8,941. The cost for the election workers were significantly reduced as we had combined precincts and only 4 to 5 workers at each polling location. The city had 8,264 registered voters at the time of the election, which is an increase of 62 voters since the August election. The voter turnout was 15%, which equals 1,240 votes cast. Of that total, 329 votes, or 26%, were absentee ballots. Of the 1,240 voters, 876 were age 60 and older. There were 664 females that voted versus 576 males. And the largest group of voters at 482, or 38%, was once again comprised of females age 60 and older. So it's kind of, I don't know if looking back at the election costs, you can kind of see that our highest cost was the printing of the ballots, and normally it's the labor. So I was really happy to see that number come in lower.
Good.
But just for next year, we cannot combine any elections because they're federal elections.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Receive file, please.
I will be receiving 5.
Second.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
Walgora?
Aye.
And Hess?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Good. We're down to new business. First up is the city manager contract. We all have in front of us. So there are a couple of minor details that were revised. There was a himself left in there and an acronym for one of the membership, professional memberships that was changed. It was emailed to us. The acronym has been revised by whoever the group is. They're going to be. Everything else was just as clear as it was when we discussed it before. Bill, oh, you have a presentation. I'll look at you.
I don't have to have a
Did I
presentation
just
because I
steal
think
all of your
I
thunder?
know, thanks, Matt. No, I really don't. I just, if you had any questions on it, I mean, we did a lot of creative scheduling for her, but we got through. Everything went just fine. We had great conversation with, excuse me, Dr. Forsberg. And if you have any questions, I will do my best without any conflicts of what I can and cannot disclose. But it was very, very favorable.
I have a question, and I'm not sure if it's for you or if it's for Bill.
Probably
So
Bill.
on vacation days, she gets 14. Is that prorated? And does it include personal?
It does not include personal days. but it would be prorated for the period of December 9th through June 30th. But those 14 days would be, covers December 9th through December 8th of 2020.
Because vacation is based on anniversary days.
Correct.
So she'll get the full 14 for that time period. The personal days fall under the benefits for admin, which you get 5, and they're use it or lose it, but they're based on the fiscal year, and they would be prorated. So I'm guessing that she would probably get 3.
She doesn't get any until she hits
Well,
6 months.
Right, but I mean, she's entitled from the time she started for 3, but she's only gonna have like a 3-week period to use them. That is starting
She'll get
on,
the full 5 after she hits 6 months.
So she doesn't
Well,
get any.
I thought you got them, but you had to work,
You have to work at 1,040 hours and then you get the full 5.
you do.
Correct.
Well, she's gonna have 3 weeks to use them with her dog, because they were using.
Unless she asks for special accommodations, in which she would have to do so through Matt.
Because otherwise they're gone.
And when they get them very late in the fiscal year, we have occasionally made accommodations for those people. It just depends, it's a case-by-case situation depending on what they have going on and why they can't take them before the fiscal year's complete.
Just curious. That's all I have.
I have no questions.
That's all I had as well. She will start on December 9th. And as a city manager effective December, she'll be effective as a city manager effective December 23rd, which I'm assuming is the Monday following Greg's last day.
I was planning on handing it over at 5 o'clock and 1 second on the 20th.
You have like a key or something?
I'll just say, the desk is yours, the office is yours. I walk out. Otherwise, you'd have 2 days, you'd have nobody to call.
I know, well, I wondered if, I know, and I understand that that is the following Monday, but Greg and the city manager is expected to work
Be
whenever.
paid.
Be responsible on the weekend.
We don't
when you
have
have
that.
service.
So you might want to say.
We probably should change it to
that to
5
PM on
Yeah,
the
5
20th.
PM on the 20th.
If you would, I think that would, I mean, it's a technicality, but I think
Yeah,
it would probably.
when I walk
be
out the
good.
door, yeah, it's fixed.
Otherwise,
I have that as a Word bill. Do you want me to just fix that?
Yeah, if you've already got it
I do.
available. And,
So then I can get it for signature,
Okay.
sure.
And just the rest of it's consistent with what had already been discussed with council, so unless there's any other questions, I guess just with that change and the changes that you already noted about herself versus himself, and the MME versus the MLGMA, I think it's ready to go.
okay.
Action on that, then, I'm assuming? Okay, I move we approve the employment agreement between Rachel Smolinski and the City of Alpena.
Second.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noack?
Yes.
Walagora? Hess?
Yes.
And Johnson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next up is Rich Sellinger with Stump grinding bid recommendation.
On November 5th, 2019, the city received no bids for the stump grinding project. Bid documents were sent to 5 vendors and made available on the city's website with 2 bids received. A1 Tree Service bid $160 per stump for years 20, 21, and 22. Hume Tree Service out of Oscoda bid $200 per stump for 20, 21, and 22. Price from A1 is the same that it has been for the last 3 years. We've been paying $160 per stump grinding. And that includes not only grinding the stump, but also restoration work that takes place. A1 Tree Service, being the low bidder, has also provided outstanding service as well as an exceptional working relationship for many years with the city. providing stump grinding and also providing bagged lawn material pickups throughout the city. As there's been no increase of the price per stump from the previous year, the contract was bid out and for the duration of the proposed contract. It is my recommendation to city engineer to award the stump grinding project A1 tree service for the as-bid unit price of $160 per stump for a 3-year period with the possibility of one-year contract renewal.
I have no question.
I move we award the contract to A1 Tree Service.
Second. Sorry.
That's okay for the years 20 through 2022 with a possibility of 1-year contract renewal.
Second.
Noack?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Hess?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
And Nielsen?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next up, portable toilet rental and service bid recommendation.
On November 5th, 2019, the city received no bids for providing and servicing portable toilets used throughout the city. Bid documents were sent to 4 vendors and posted on the City of Alpena's website. One bid was received from Hall Serval. Hall Serval has been providing consistent service for the city for many years. Currently, the city is paying $76.31 for each standard unit and $107.97 for each handicap unit. Hall Servo has proposed lower monthly rates for each of the 3 years of the proposed contract than what the city is currently paying in 2019, as indicated in the spreadsheet below for price comparison. It's my recommendation to city engineer to award the contract for supplying portable toilets throughout the city to Hall Servo for the as-bid unit prices for years 20, 21, and 22, with the possibility of a one-year renewal contract extension if both parties can agree on the prices.
Awesome. All right.
You can't argue with that.
Okay.
I have no questions. I move we approve the bid from Hall Serval for supplying portable toilet service as presented.
Second.
Walagora? Hess?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
And Noack?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next up, dumpster service bid recommendation.
On November 5th, 2019, the city received no bids for providing necessary dumpsters, emptying of dumpsters, emptying of trash cans, and supplying liners to the areas throughout the city. Bid documents were sent to 3 vendors as well as posted on the city's website with 2 bids received as follows. And L&N was the only one who actually submitted prices. Waste Management declined to bid. L&N Disposal has indicated a $1.75 price per cubic yard increase and a 75-cent price increase per can for the first year. A 25-cent price per cubic yard increase for each additional year has been requested, although the $2.50 price per can remains the same for 21 and 22. Just as an informational point, they empty the trash receptacles in the downtown, the black cans. They go through and they empty those twice a week for us and put new liners in, and that way they can do it with the truck as they're going down the road. Upon review of the proposed prices and considering the service the city has received from L&N Disposal in the past, it is my recommendation to city engineer to award the contract to L&N Disposal for the unit prices provided for a 3-year period with the possibility of a one-year contract renewal.
My only question was the trash can thing. I didn't,
Yeah.
when I saw that, I didn't realize that they had been doing that. That's been that way for,
Yeah, we pick them up out in the parks because
because I've seen us do them.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize.
we can get our 1-tons in there and pick those up, but out on the street, it's a lot more efficient to just have them pick them up out there.
Okay. Makes sense.
I do have one question, just out of curiosity. When we have a festival or the 4th of July or time, do they come an extra time and after there's a lot of people downstairs?
No.
I mean downtown?
If there is, a lot of times DPW will go through and do an additional empty on
Oh,
those.
okay. I see. Thank you.
And I just had a question too. And I don't think that we put the recycling bins out this year, did we? I didn't see that.
I thought they worked. I asked Sean about that earlier today.
What happens with those?
Well, The contractor, Greenway, what they did is they spotted a dumpster over at DPW. And the directions we had from them was just, when you empty out the recycling, take and put them in that dumpster, and then they would take care of them. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what they've been doing with them, if they've been taking them to get recycled or not. And
Okay.
that's something we'll have to follow up on.
Okay, if you need help with that, let me know, because
Okay.
maybe we can work on something. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
No?
I move we award the bid to L&M for 20 through 22 with a 3-year, provided for 3 years with a possibility of 1 year renewal. One year renewal at the stated prices.
Second.
Hess,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nielsen,
Yes.
Nowak,
Yes.
and Walagora.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you, Greg. Next is the SUEZ operational contract extension.
Just because we go from portable toilets to dumpsters to SUEZ is not an indication. Mike Lewinsky has provided the attached operations contract renewal request for utility operations. The current agreement is slated to expire on June 30th of 2020. The renewal requested, a 4-year extension, is delineated in the contract, would extend the operations contract to June 30th, 2024. The contract extension, if approved, would also extend the current compensation adjustment clause, which sets any increase in labor compensation to the same percentage as the increase approved by City Council for our Public Works Department staff. No additional compensation increase has been requested as part of this renewal. And just as a, if there is, and we have it set up in the agreement that if there's new rules and regulations that come down the pipe from Eagle that we have to implement that costs the utility additional funds that they're responsible for, they do have the ability every February, March to come to council and request an adjustment in that. And they've done it a number of times. And we review them and make sure that they are rules and regulations that are coming down. And I know, I think the last time they did an increase, there was actually some additional costs that they didn't ask for, those increases to be implemented. With the Amendment 6 as submitted by SUEZ, SUEZ personnel have attempted to clean up language within the agreement. I've attached a copy of the 1988 agreement for reference, as this amendment makes reference to this original agreement. The city's been working with SUEZ personnel under previous names and ownership since July of 1986. While personnel change over time, Mike Lewinsky has been the project manager since the inception of the contract. The city has developed an outstanding working relationship with SUEZ employees, working in benefit of the city. The long-term relationship which exists has been a benefit to city staff and citizens of the city due to their familiarity of the utility operations. SUEZ staff has stepped up and works hand in hand with city employees to ensure the best services possible are provided to the customer. In many instances, SUEZ employees provide additional services not required by the contract in support of city staff and ensure the best possible outcome for the project. City staff looks to the appropriate SUEZ employees to ensure compliance with state mandates, obtain the best possible pricing for utility purchases, and solicit input for capital improvements. While a contractor of the city, they are looked upon more as a fellow staff member in day-to-day operations. Based on the mutual benefit to both the city and SUEZ, it is my recommendation as city engineer that City Council authorize a 4-year extension of the SUEZ contract, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the city. This contract extension would be for a period from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2024. And Mike Lewinsky has a short PowerPoint presentation that he would like to run through. What? Yeah.
first move up here in 1986, I had no idea I'd be here as long as I have been. I've had the pleasure of working with lots of different city personnel, and they've, like Rich says, they've treated us like staff members, and I really do, we all appreciate that. I just wanted to go through a little synopsis of what SUEZ is, because SUEZ has only been associated with this contract for about 12 years. Of course, you can all recognize the SUEZ Canal. The SUEZ Canal was one of the first P3s, and P3 is public-private partnership. And that's how we look at our arrangement with the city of Alpena. SUEZ Canal Company was formed in 1858, and they used innovative coal and steam-powered technology to build the canal. And the canal was opened in 1869. SUEZ is a world leader in sustainable resource management. Just kind of some statistics. In the water industry, we have 92 million people are supplied drinking water by SUEZ operations. We have 1,130 drinking water production sites, which are basically their wells. Presently, we operate on 5 continents, 90,000 employees, 19.36 billion in revenue in 1988. 31% of that revenue was generated outside of Europe. And we have a $142 million global research and innovation budget. SUEZ is the second largest environmental services company in North America. We have 2,825 employees, 6.6. Moving a little bit too fast for me.
Is there a way to
Anyway,
slow that down?
this is a kind of a spectrum of where we have operations in the United States. We have 15 water companies. We actually own those water companies, and those are primarily located in New Jersey. This is not going the way that it should go.
You got like 3 seconds. Go.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to touch on the value-added stuff that we've been doing over the last basically 30 years. We have a very good relationship with the city engineering department, and we do a lot of in-house capital projects where the city actually purchases the equipment, and we use our own staff to do the installations of that equipment. We help with design specification development for the capital projects. We've had a lot of new regulations come down within the last 10 years. A lot of them are associated with asset management plans for water and wastewater. Those are very, very complicated projects to put together. They actually give up to 10 years to implement them fully. And basically, it's identifying your critical components in your utility, identifying the condition of those pieces of equipment, identifying the criticality, and getting an idea of what the probability of them failing. Anytime you have a catastrophic failure, it costs you more money to repair it. So it's basically we're being forced to look 10 years into the future and plan 10 years into the future so that we're not dealing with catastrophic events. PFOA and PFAS is a new contaminant that is coming on the stage. We're finding out that it was used for 30 or 35 years in all kinds of different products that anywhere from Teflon coating on pans to the coatings that are put on carpeting and furniture to keep them from being absorbing moisture. We're finding that those are very, very, they concentrate in biological in fish, and they're also very long-lived. Based on the risks that they pose, we've been required to put together a minimization plan at the wastewater treatment plant, which basically is going out and looking at industries and seeing what kind of manufacturing processes that they have, and if they might be using PFAS or PFOA, and then getting them to use other products that are suitable for their purposes but don't have the same kind of danger associated with them. And lead, We all know about Flint. We're also been required to come up with a lead water service inventory, which is very hard to do because everything's buried. You have to look at all of your records, look at your history of when you've had digs and you've come up with lead pipes that we had to replace on the service side, and getting a best judgment on how much lead you actually have out there. And fortunately, it looks like we don't have that much. We don't have the problem that Flint had. I'm going to say we're going to have probably about 5% of what's buried in the ground right now in Alpena is possibly lead. So those are new regulations that, according to our contract, we could actually ask for compensation for doing those projects, but because we have such a strong partnership with the city, we've decided that that's one of those value-added things that would provide without charging extra for it. Some of the other things we've been doing, the energy efficiency rebates with the power companies, we've been focusing on trying to get energy minimization projects that we can actually get some value back from the power companies. And we've had two recently where we got $13,500 back in rebates. And that was approximately 15% of what the project cost is. Not only are you getting those rebates, but you're seeing a reduction in your power costs as a result of those projects. And then we've had some significant savings because of our supply chain management program. We're able to negotiate, and because of the size of SUEZ, we're able to negotiate large-scale reductions in costs. One big one is with Hawk. Hawk is a major supplier of analytical equipment for the water industry. And because we have such we're such a large company and we deal with a lot of purchases like that, we've been able to secure 35% reduction in what the cost would be. So we can purchase things that are needed by the city. We can pay the sales taxes of 6%, and we can charge a 10% administrative fee, and you're still getting a value for us purchasing those pieces of equipment. Likewise, the census meters, which are the smart meters that we put in, and right now, we're about 6 months away from paying that off. SUEZ financed that project. That was a $1.5 million project that we financed over the 8-year term of the contract. These are some of the in-house capital improvement projects that we've been able to accomplish with just the staff that we have here. The city purchasing, bidding out, and what generally happens is we provide the city engineering department with specs that we want, and they will refine them based on what the city's purchasing policies are. Those projects are bid out, the equipment comes in, and with the staff that we have, our existing staff, we're able to accomplish those installations without hiring a private contractor to do them. Here's a whole list of some of the things that we've done over the last 6 years, and there's about $50,700 in savings by not hiring private contractors to do those installations. This is one of the ones we're real pleased with. It's hard to see, but this is an area in the water filtration plant, the 1965 portion of the plant where high service pumps were put in and meters. It's a very, very tight space. You have to get down very, very low to get in and manipulate the equipment that we had to get in there. So you couldn't just go out and pick out any meter on the industry. You had to actually look and see what was going to be best fit for that tight space. So what we were able to do was we were able to live tap the water main coming out of the plant. That produces, or that meters the finished water going out into the distribution system. We live tapped and were able to insert meters right into the pipe, which eliminated the need for taking the pipe apart, and it's a confined space. It's a very, very difficult space to work in. This had a very significant impact on the the lawsuit with the township because we always saw a very major difference between how much water we were producing at the plant and how much we were actually selling. And that was generally 25 to 30%. There was a 25 to 30% difference in that. Consequently, the township was saying that, well, you're not reading the meters right. You're giving us a bad deal. After we put these meters in, we got about a year's worth of data. And Bill can attest that there was a significant portion of that lawsuit that was trying to recover overcharges that the city, they claimed the city had made over the course of 25 years. And I think they were perfectly set to go out and try to recover those. When we showed them that there was a difference and there was actually a metering problem, they dropped that part of the lawsuit. And that was probably worth millions of dollars. This is another thing that's hard to see, is filter to waste valves. Back in the late 80s, the city of Milwaukee had a problem with a parasite called Cryptosporidium. And that comes from, it's an internal parasite that's found in warm-blooded animals. They had a problem with a lot of rainfall and a lot of rain running off the ground in agricultural areas, and the Cryptosporidium getting into their water treatment plant, and there were hundreds of thousands of people that were affected by that. As a result of that, EPA came up with what is called the Enhanced Surface Water Treatment Rule. Part of that rule is they're called oocytes, which is like an egg from the Cryptosporidium. They will get into a filter, which we use rapid sand filters to filter the water. And what they found was that once you start up a filter that's been sitting for a while, a lot of water goes through it, and it will wash that Cryptosporidium oocyte out and be a potential contaminant to your system. So they required that we filter to waste. When we start that filter up, the first, we have to make sure that the turbidity coming out of it, the particles coming out of it aren't too high. And in order to do that, we had to put in a valve and an actuator and a T and run a line from the discharge from the filter to the pipe that would take the backwash water from the filter. It's hard to see in this picture, but that just doing one valve took a 6-man crew a week to complete, and we did 3 of those, with the city purchasing all of the equipment necessary and SUEZ providing the labor to do the installation. And this is also at the water filtration plant. And this is actually the wall that is facing the lake side of the plant. There are 2 tanks that are there that hold the finished water. And we pump from those tanks into the distribution system. Well, when this tank was put in 1965, they never put an isolation valve in on the outside of the building. So we have the pump station inside and we have a valve on each side of the pump. But if that line breaks someplace between there, it's going to flood the plant out. So the regulators told us we had to do something about that. So you can see where the top picture there, that's where we did the dig. There's a trench box there with the person in the hole, cutting it with a chop saw. It's a 24-inch pipe, a 24-inch valve. We had every available person to do this job because we needed to get that back in service as quickly as possible. The advantages to the smart meters. There was actually a bid put out by, I believe it was Siemens, and it was an efficiency proposal where they wanted to replace all of the meters in town, and their price tag was $2.5 million. We did that project for $1 million, and it was financed over the 8 years of the contract, so without any finance charges to the city of Alpena. As a result of putting the smart meters in, we no longer are required to go around and read meters. We actually had the power company reading meters for us, and they were charging us $2,500 a month to read meters. Over the course of the 8-year term of the contract, you've saved $240,000 in meter reading fees. And we are also able to run a weekly consumption report for all the customers in town. And that will tell us anyone that is using more than 10% higher than their normal use. We're able to contact them and tell them, give them some tips on what they might be able to do to find those leaks and correct them. And we keep track of how many times we do that over the course of the month. We've notified 2,517 customers over the course of 8 years that they had a problem with losing water. Previously, if they went for 3 months with that leak, it would have generated a tremendous bill for them. So obviously, we think that's a good enhancement to the service we provide the city of Alpena. We recently had a prime example of how this is valuable is the Habitat Restore building after the fire. We ran a consumption report, and they were losing 900 gallons a minute. I'm sorry, an hour, 900 gallons an hour. And as a result of that, we were able to get into the building and actually shut that water off. We couldn't really get to it any quicker than a week because it was considered a possible crime scene. And it was also dangerous. We had a lot of debris that we had to work around. So obviously, we think that's a prime example of what the advantages are for the smart meters. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them if I could.
You said earlier, Mike, that you send out surveys to customers?
We send surveys out generally on a weekly basis.
Okay.
They come back to the city clerk's office so that they have a chance to look at them, see if we're doing bad. And then they give them back to us, and then we keep track of that. Since we've been doing the survey, we're better than 95% satisfaction from those surveys.
Greg, sorry.
I know Greg had some
Sorry, Joe.
questions on some of the language that was in the contract. I've been informed that, we're more than happy to be flexible on any of that language.
Well, the only things I had were simply, some of the numbering, when you went back to the old contract, where you said you were replacing this, putting new in, and yet the numbers didn't match with the article. You had Article 4, but the numbers are 6.
All that stuff went to New Jersey to
So,
to the
so that
attorneys in New
didn't,
Jersey.
so there were some issues there, and
We
on
can certainly
Article
correct
2,
that.
it says the change was made in paragraph G, but based upon what it's about, it looked like it was more appropriate for paragraph F. So those things should just be double checked before we sign, everybody signs the agreement. I know there was one question that came to me during the discussion was kind of what is the, we know you can't just give us a total amount of the contract because some things depend upon how much maintenance you do, labor costs change based on our contract, but is there a ballpark of what the base amount is?
We do have a budget that is for operation and maintenance. That budget is $307,500 for all of the operation and maintenance of the utility. As I told Mike, I think, when we asked for the increase this last time around, that we do not make any profit on that. That's a direct pass-through cost. It would be just like the city paying those costs directly. The last thing that we want is to have a perception that we are making money by scrimping on maintaining your system.
I guess the only other thing I did look up was what's in our budget and operations. I think between the two, water and sewer come to about 1.2, 1.3 million. under, it says operations contract.
The monthly fee is actually $125,000.
So that would be pretty close to that
That's about
number.
$1.5 million a year.
Yeah, so I was saying 1.3, whatever.
then,
And there
there's-
may be some other costs that I missed, but that's what you're looking at as far as.
And the city also pays, they pay the power costs and all the utilities and all the chemicals. And the only thing that we are charging for is for labor. That's the only thing, that's the only place where we make any money. The $15,625 that is going towards the meters right now, that stops in June of this year, or 2020. So that's money that can be reinvested into the utility for other capital projects.
Bill, did you have an opportunity to review that?
Yeah, there were a few issues that Greg had raised that need to be cleaned up.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I don't
Thank
have
you.
any other questions.
No,
It's
the
been
only
a
oth-
pleasure working with all of you.
The only other question I had too on this is because it was asked me and I didn't know how to answer this, was maybe something for Bill. This is I forget how many times we've renewed this, for 4 times, I believe, for a 4-year renewal. And I asked Greg earlier too about, is this something that has to be bid out, rebid, or, according to our charter or anything? Because we do with other contracts. I mean, we can always choose to work with who we work with, and, but I wanted to make sure that we're not missing anything here.
Just to give you a history of how it's all gone down.
Oh, yeah.
I
remember
did have
the
a slide,
beginning.
but it timed out on me.
Yeah.
86, there was a contract to just manage the wastewater treatment plant. 88, that got expanded to the entire utility. 92, it was bid out, the utility operation was bid out, and I believe there was one competitor. I think the comment at the time was that it took an awful lot. It's a very complex bid process.
Oh, very much
And I
so.
think that at that point, there was a 4-year renewal option that was added to the contract, just because I think one of the city managers didn't want to have to go through that again. But it's been renewed, the 4-year renewal options have been going on all the way up until 2012. 2012, then we proposed the meter change-out program and financing that, and that's when it went to 8 years in order to make the payments manageable.
I don't know that we're required to bid it out. I mean, if the council wanted to decide to do that, we could do that. I mean, the initial contract said it remains in effect for 4 years from the effective date, provided the compensation can be agreed upon pursuant to Article 3. So it didn't, I'm not sure why why the first renewal, I mean, I guess I don't know, wasn't around then, and so I don't know if at some point in time there was actually a vote by council to continue to renew it for the 4 years. I mean, you mentioned something about one of the previous city managers not wanting to go down that road, but I guess we'd have to research that to give you a definite answer as to, if council actually voted on that at that time, or if that was just a recommendation that, and then the 4-year renewals just kept coming along. Because it's more than 4 times, actually. It's been,
Well, if you count the 8 years,
yeah,
6, I
it's been
think.
6 times, I think,
Okay.
yeah.
And part of what you have to look at is, as long as you're getting a good value, and you don't feel you're being taken advantage of because of, you get used to each other or whatever, is the fact that they know the system intimately, which if you put it out to bid, you got somebody new, it's really starting a lot of things all over again, and becomes very, much more, a lot of work, and I'm not sure in terms of cost effectiveness that allow you, if you're really saving any money. as long as you have something that is working to the benefit of both, then it makes sense, especially on something like this where you're operating a complex system with highly trained people as well. And this is really not a factor, but it is something that's out there. Many of these, you know, the workers, I mean, they're residents here, they live here, they're members of the community. If a new company came in, they may say, well, we got our own people, bring them in from outside, then, you know, you suddenly have all these people basically employed.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a reason to say we're not gonna bid it out, and we're not looking, because obviously we gotta look at what's best for the city. But all those things become factors, I think, when we begin to look at it.
I 100% agree with that too, and it isn't anything, you know, my first question was just to ask Bill if, you know, according to the first contractor, if there's anything, something that is this high, you know, should it be bid out on a regular basis, or is there something in our charter that, you know, states that we should do that, so we're not in any violation of that. The other thing is, there's a lot of value that can be added beyond, you know, what the cost is, but, you know, one of the things that I like to always have is like, I don't have anything to compare to. You know, you guys add a lot of value and stuff like that, but what are other communities paying for the services? You know, is it the 125,000, or are they paying 60? You know, I don't know, so that's what I was just asking for. If I had something to compare, and maybe the city engineer can help us with that too. I mean, I'm not opposed to SUEZ. I've never been that way. The service and the information that I'm getting from citizens that you're servicing has been fantastic. So I'm really happy with that too. So I guess I got two parts. It's like, one, I don't have anything to compare to, which I think I've gotten the reputation of, I like to at least have that. And the other is just to make sure that we're not in, you know, any gray areas or anything for.
I guess my suggestion to council would be, since we know there's a little bit of language that we gotta clear up, or at least make sure that we're not, you know, that F is referring to F and not referring to G, there's a couple like that. But if you wanted to bring it back for approval on December 2nd, I'll check the charter, make sure there's nothing that stands in the way there, that we don't have to bid it out.
I'd be surprised if there was, because our insurance stayed with the same carrier for
Yep.
years, our retirement stayed with the same carrier for decades.
Auditor.
auditors.
Our auditors did the same, so, I mean, by all means, you should probably take a look, but
Okay.
we'd probably have to do a lot of adjusting if that's.
And I think the other thing is, when you say about comparing, especially up here in northern Michigan, a lot of the communities, even if they're on the lake, they get their water from a different source, many of them are wells, so you have different requirements, different costs, so, you know, they're not really
Yeah,
comparable.
it's
when
hard to
you
get an apples to
compare.
apples. I
You gotta
understand.
have one that
It's just-
pumps lake water, because the processes are different, things are different, for at least what I've been told, therefore that impacts the cost, things like that. So, I mean, you're gonna have a limited number of where you can really get a accurate, or at least a reasonable comparison, but it's not that you can't do it.
We can look around and see.
I mean, and I understand the complexities of the system and having an apples-to-apples comparison, but, you know, it just, that would make me feel better, and since we have language to clean up anyway, I think that, you know, I'm not opposed to that.
We can take apples and bananas and try to get them so that
Yeah,
they're
I
at
know.
least somewhat comparative.
And I appreciate that.
I mean, and that's gonna be the value of them knowing what they know about our system. Like, from my perspective, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of his last statements was the primary amount of what we're paying for is the labor that they put into, because it's our system, we buy the stuff that they put in. So really, when it comes to it, you look at the numbers, I didn't, but look at the numbers of their labor and how much we pay them, and how much their labor costs are, and then say, yeah, it's a pretty good deal, or no, they're making $80 billion out of us annually, because, you know, I mean, there's that to me, because you start comparing, and like I said, I can't even imagine you're gonna find a comparison, period,
Sure.
anywhere.
Yep.
But, I mean, we know that just in the last 4 or 5 years, we've learned more and more about our system, but we're
And I'm
paying
happy
them
to
and
do
they
that.
pay labor, so, I mean,
You're paying for their expertise
and their
Yep.
expertise.
Right.
Sure, there's gonna be more on top of just what
with those.
the guys make,
Well,
and gals.
I don't think there's anything wrong with us pushing it back, you know, and having Bill take a look to make sure that we're not doing anything on that end, but too, which I doubt there is. But, you know,
Yeah,
if council would so.
might as well clean it up anyhow, get it right.
Okay.
There's no rush.
Thank you.
So we need,
On the table.
yeah, table till next meeting. So move.
Second.
Thank you.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
And Hess.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, had a pause here for site control and maintenance for the Thunder Bay Riverfront public infrastructure improvements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As the mayor indicated, part of the required process to move the Thunder Bay Riverfront Public Infrastructure Improvement Grant forward is obtaining site control of the grant area. The MEDC requires that the city of Alpena obtain site control through a long-term 50-year lease or easement, and to have parties designated as responsible for the maintenance of the public infrastructure improvements for the term of the lease. City staff is aware that maintenance activities for the proposed infrastructure improvements would require time and funding from our Department of Public Works employees that are already assigned a great deal of other tasks throughout the city during the year. Adding additional maintenance activities for the proposed improvements may result in a reduction of services to other areas in the city. City staff has estimated the cost of the annual maintenance for various infrastructure improvements included in the grant, and those estimates are included on the attachment memo from Rich. One of the methods that the city utilizes to reduce costs are to utilize community partnerships and various community service groups to assist with maintenance activities on playgrounds and other public infrastructure. While the MEDC is not opposed to this method of maintenance, they have noted that agreements with these types of partners usually are not binding, and the MEDC requires a party to be ultimately responsible for the maintenance for the term of the lease. In this case, responsible parties would be either the city or the landowner. Entering into the discussions with the landowner, they indicated that they currently plow snow and mow a portion of grass on the site and feel they would be willing to continue to do these activities. Upon questioning if they'd be responsible for additional maintenance activities, they indicated they're in full support of the project and have shown support by by potentially granting a 50-year lease on a significant portion of property, and would continue the maintenance activities of which they are already responsible, including plowing vehicular use areas and mowing at least a portion of the grass or lawn. If the city is to be ultimately responsible for the maintenance of the additional infrastructure, including sports courts, playscape, lighting, shoreline improvements, kayak canoe launch, festival space, and other park amenities, the estimated cost would be at $14,200 annually if the property owner would handle all of the mowing. The Friends of the Thunder Bay Marine Sanctuary Group have indicated they could potentially assist, and at least one community service organization has indicated their desire to assist as well, which could help offset annual costs, but there is no requirement or guarantee for these groups to fulfill these services for the 50-year term of the lease. There are some other costs for maintenance as well that have not been included in the estimates, as the city feels they would be responsible for maintaining trail improvements and lighting along the river, as well as the two pavilions included in the proposed grant. In addition to the maintenance, city will also incur costs regarding insurance for these improvements. Staff has inquired what the costs would be for similar infrastructure improvements in the city, as the city does have similar improvements in other parks, and that we're waiting for the information from our insurance carrier. There is no doubt this is a large project, and although everything constructed would be new, eventually all public infrastructure has maintenance costs that increase with age. Staff would like to make the City Council aware that what these annual costs would be estimated, and the term of the commitment of the grant in order to move forward. Staff would ask that Council determine which party should be responsible for these costs so the appropriate maintenance agreement can be determined. And presumably what we'd like to do is have that maintenance agreement attached as part of the lease, though it's recorded with the lease.
They were responsible for that.
It was my, I guess it's my opinion that this is a leased property and the vast majority of it is going to be seen as city property. City park, city kitty park, city garden area, city pavilions. And so when it came down to the insurance requirements, and we haven't gotten a report yet from our insurance carrier, we insure all of our other parks, and it was my opinion that we really would would ultimately be responsible for that, rather than the landowner, because if somebody were to hurt themselves on a swing or at a pavilion or at the, any of these structures that they're putting up, the sports court, I can only see them coming to the city. If they went to the landowner's insurance company, and I'm not an insurance agent, but they're gonna say, well, I mean, it's on his property, but it's a public place. All this stuff is gonna be completely open to the public. And so, that was my opinion on the insurance thing. And then the other, I guess the biggest concerns were, we sat, Cindy and I went and had a meeting with Adam and the landowner. And it's, as far as the mowing and the plowing, I think it's reasonable. He felt it was reasonable in the end, that he maintained those. So those are kind of, I think those can be written up in the lease agreement, that he would maintain those. Some of the other stuff, I mean, I'm a little concerned. I honestly think that because, again, it's public, it's gonna be kind of viewed and used as a public space, that I really don't see putting that on the landowner, because it's not his stuff. But how much is that, what's the reality of how much that's gonna cost us in the end for roof replacements? I mean, 50 years, I'm assuming in 50 years, we're gonna have to be putting a roof on it, on these pavilions. So things of that nature. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Well, somebody should be 25 years from now. But we should be concerned about them. Not any more or less than we are about Starlight Beach and the trailhead. I see this being used very frequently, weather permitting, certainly more than the trailhead is. So I think the project warrants as much, if not more, of our participate of that.
That's easy for you to say.
Than the trailhead, perhaps, but.
Yeah.
And then you look at Rich's cost, and I had a couple questions about Rich's cost as far as how were these calculated as far as the for sports courts, $3,000 annually for sport court maintenance is, how does that, what do we spend $3,000? Just so I
What
can
I'm
answer
looking
to
at is
someone.
that over a period of time, you are gonna have to put a new surface on it, so you take that, divide it out over the rough life of
Okay.
it. As far as like mowing, other maintenance activities, we looked at similar areas, similar parks. I sat down with Sean, I said, Sean, okay, if we had to do this area, what's it gonna cost us? And that's how we came up with those numbers, just
Okay.
looking at
I assumed
similar
that-
type
yeah,
activities.
okay. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that I was assuming correctly, especially for things that really don't get a lot of annual,
Right.
like a basketball court. I mean, we replaced the nets on them, but you've amortized that over a number of years to resurface it or something.
And then the one concern I had too is like, and I agree with what you say, if this is gonna be a public space and it's gonna be leased by the city, then, I expressed to Greg earlier too, then it's basically controlled by the city. We have control of who can use it, who can rent it out, the pavilions and stuff like that would be handled in the same way that we actually would every other park.
I would assume so, yeah.
That's, and that's something we can put in this lease agreement as well, and that it would be handled that way.
I mean, we could clarify that, certainly.
Yeah.
That would be, I mean, I would assume as it's property leased by the city and equipment owned by the city and maintained by the city, or whatever, however that ends up, that we would be able to charge associated fees like we do for any other pavilion we have.
Just my own, if you don't mind.
No.
Just having been at least somewhat involved with this and seeing other projects that we've done. I think Noah's role's been rather somewhat downplayed. It's like it's between us and the property owners we have contact with. I think Noah has a major role in this. This has been something that they initiated in many ways. we were involved directly with them on 2 previous grants for the amphitheater and stuff along the path. And we pretty much knew that if those developed, we were going to have responsibility there. But after those failed, and I don't know what came first or whatever, but Noah began looking at more of a master plan of the site around their building and hired a consultant to work with them, and that's where this expanded far beyond the amphitheater and a few pavilions and maybe the canoe launch or the boat launch, and suddenly had all these other play structures that even went into the improvements of the parking lot and so forth. And then these were, whatever, there was some meeting or somehow contact with the MEDC, and they saw the plan, and as the MEDC did, and then later recanted on some of the things that they had said, but ultimately came up and said, we got all this extra money, CDBG money we need to get rid of, do you have any projects? And they showed them that, and they said they liked it. And yeah, they ended up saying, we'll give you $3.8 million, you come up with another, I think it's roughly 400,000 or so.
440.
Yeah, that they had to come up with. And it included a lot of features that were never in the original projects that we tried to get funded and couldn't. And we weren't involved in any of that design, never looked at, do we need more sports courts or this or that? It was, we'd like to put this in. And so when the project came about, of course, then it happened to be, well, by the way, NOAA cannot apply for the money because it is federal money, CDBG, they're a federal agency, you can't apply. So, will the city be the applicant? We've done that for other groups before, we've basically been a pass-through, but then this morphed into be more than just a pass-through. Now suddenly we had to have control of the property in this long-term either lease or easement. And then, oh, by the way, yes, and then you're going to take over the maintenance, you're gonna have the insurance costs, and really, maintenance is, to me, a very minor cost. What's really gonna be the cost is all this stuff wears out over time and has to be replaced, or it gets broken, vandalized, whatever the case may be. And we gotta start replacing it, and then that's all suddenly going to fall to the city. My point, or my position has been that basically everything on the riverside of the current Heritage Trail. And then there's one pavilion, I think, actually on the landward side of the 2 or 3 that are included. That as well, that the city would take responsibility for. And those were areas that we were gonna do anyways. Where I have more of a problem is that play area to the north, I guess you would say, of the tank, the large water tank and the deck area, where the old lagoon used to be. That was really a development pushed by NOAA, and I think they need to be the ones responsible for it over the long term. Now, whether they include that in their budget, or whether they make some arrangement with Jeff Contract, at some cost for him to maintain that, whatever, that's irrelevant to me. That's for them. I'm not sure how they handle that tank right now. After that was redone, that nice deck installed, I think as a donation by Mr. Konjorski. That has to be maintained, that has to have, somebody looking over it. I don't know if that's Jeff Contract or if it's Noah. But that is simply, my feeling on it. And what I think is in the best interest of the city. I have concerns about these costs being placed with as a burden on the taxpayer on areas that we really never, in our park plan, master plan, we don't have anything where we're saying, yes, we need these elements in this general area, these additional facilities. So that has become, that's a concern of mine. I do agree that whatever we do insure, maintain, that, yes, we have the ultimate control. And we need to make that very clear to Noah, because I think certainly as they initiated this, and the things, let's say, like the amphitheater, that they're looking at that this is for their use and a lot of it, and that they may want to have control over who uses it. I think we should handle it very similar as we do Rotary Island. We don't own that island. We have an agreement with the Rotary Club. They could certainly use it and probably have priority use, but they must let us know, because we keep the calendar, the schedule of use. So if they know they're gonna be using it so many times a year for this, that, the other, fine, let us know and we put it down. But when it's not, then we can then allow other groups to use it. Whether we charge for it or not would be up to us, but at least we do have that control, and I think that needs to be there throughout. But, I mean, we don't know, and I don't think, Rich isn't gonna be able to come down, or Adam or anybody else, and say, here's a hard number of what the costs are gonna be for maintenance and whatnot. That's gonna vary from year to year. We may have almost no cost one year and a whole lot of it the next year. But over time, the costs are gonna build up, because we see it at other parts, where facilities that have been there even sometimes only 5, 6, 8 years, and they start needing pieces replaced or whatever. Some of the play equipment that the Rotary put in at Starlight Beach. We've had to make repairs, replacements on those, and they've been in, maybe 8 years or so, probably, Rich? So, those costs are gonna be there, and it's just how much do we absorb on them? And I think we need to be very careful, but whatever we do, we have to make sure the agreement is spelled out completely in writing as to everybody's responsibilities.
Correct. That's very important. In the end, the landowner has already indicated that he is not going to enter into an agreement to maintain any of that. So that burden is on us. So the decision is, and quite frankly, the most disturbing part about the whole thing is we don't know exactly what the entire plan will be. Got a pretty good idea, right? I mean, it's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, we have knowledge of roughly what it's gonna be now as far as locations. For instance, we don't know what sports court it's going to be. We just know we have potential funding for sports courts.
Right.
I don't know, those plans are not solidified as of yet.
Yeah.
At the last council meeting, we did authorize the final development of those plans, but until these issues are completed, I don't think they're gonna be starting that final design yet.
So we're tasked with, basically, they're saying, we're gonna take that burden, and we're going to work with community partners, which we, as in the community, Jeff and us have already had some discussions, as in memo states, that there are parties that are interested in doing a certain amount, I'm sure, of maintaining something, but even though even if he says today, somebody from one of those groups signs something that says, yep, I'll take care of these for the next 25 to 50 years. If they decide 10 years from now that they're done and they walk away from it, that burden is on us, it's on the city. Some of my perspective is, okay, so you build a park and a garden and a sculpture area, and if it gets damaged and nobody's using it, it's not really getting a ton of use anyhow. There's nothing that says it has to be replaced. There's nothing in the grant that says that anything has to be replaced if it gets taken out or.
I mean, obviously, that's not the goal of the grant, but
Obviously
there
not
is
the
nothing
goal.
that prevents it. And,
Right, I'm not
had-
saying we would, that we would automatically do that, but let's just say that some playground equipment 10, 15 years from now needs to be replaced. We would work with a community partner, and maybe a group or something, and say, would you guys be interested in doing some fundraising to replace some of this stuff? And if they say no, and we at that point don't have it in our budget to replace it, well, then I guess we just don't. I guess that's kind of my perspective. The safe way of saying, but it's clear that it's either gonna be us, and we would have to make some agreements with community partners and hope that they don't back out, or it's not gonna happen.
And Lesno was willing to take on as part of their budget certain.
Jeff was sitting in the meeting.
Well, and I thought, and I don't know if he said, no, we won't do it, or if he just didn't, I wasn't there, so I can't. Did he give any indication of Noah's participation or lack thereof?
I know there are, and I don't want to speak on their behalf because I don't know for sure, but I know they have some limitations of, kind of what types of activities they're allowed to engage in, which is why they have the Friends group, which does a lot of the other activities that Noah can't participate in because of whatever guidelines they have. To that end, I don't know.
He made a comment that, and I think I can safely say, if I say it the way he did, was that the Friends are obviously doing a ton of fundraising to get the match, and that this wasn't their, up until this was a go, this wasn't what they were initially intended and formed to raise money for. So that would sort of maybe indicate to me that they're probably not going to be incredibly interested in continuing on ongoing fundraising efforts to maintain anything.
Can I ask one question? Do we know if the grant, when it actually gets here, is going to require the city to replace?
What's that?
Do we know if the grant's going to require us to replace for a certain period of time? I know they want us to have a 50-year lease, but is it going to require us to maintain those facilities for 50 years as part of getting that money?
Different agencies have different rules in regarding, like the DNR, we're supposed to maintain buildings for a certain period of time, other things in perpetuity. With the MEDC and MDOT, that hasn't necessarily been the case for at least smaller elements in the past. We have like removed plantings and things like that. And we have had that flexibility. Ultimately, it would have to be reviewed in the final grant agreement. So I guess that's a long way of saying,
Not sure.
I don't think we have to, but I don't know for sure.
So I have a couple of questions. So Greg had mentioned the tank. Would we be tasked to maintaining everything, including what's there, or would we be tasked with maintaining the new stuff?
The grant area would be where any improvements are constructed. And it is going to be a very unique shape, potentially, whatever lease area it is, because it's pretty much going to go around the building, around the tank and the deck, and around that little boathouse they have. So because we obviously don't want to lease over any building or structure that's already there. So it'll be essentially following wherever proposed improvements are and very uniquely shaped because of that.
So we wouldn't be tasked with maintaining the tank?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, any existing structures, everything.
We will draw around it.
The line will go around it as far as the
And we-
easement or lease area.
We had a discussion about the building that might turn into a rental for the boat club, perhaps.
Correct. There is part of this grant includes a storage building that could be utilized for various nonprofits. The first thought was the sailing club. They operate in that area.
We also had a discussion about where it was and maybe moving it to another section, so it wasn't.
Correct. As far as moving any of these improvements, that's fairly simple and easily done at this stage. But as far as, we adding more, we're beyond that. We can probably pick things off if need be.
Okay. And then the city could capture all the rent on pavilions in that building and all of those things. We could capture that money.
I would need to verify if there's a limitation regarding types of rent. I mean, we've obviously rented pavilions that are grant funded previously. Haven't had any funded from the MEDC, but at the same point, DNR certainly doesn't stop it as long as it's available for public use other times, but it's just the reservations we've been collecting to this point.
So we could use some of that money if we can collect it. It seems to me if we're in charge of leasing a building that is put up, we should be able to collect that money. Some of that money could be put toward maintenance as well, right?
Potentially.
What happens to the taxes on that?
Well, at one time that was brought up about whether or not this property should now all become tax exempt. I don't know what the taxes are on it. That would have to be up to, you know, in terms of a value of it, would have to be through our assessor to determine. But, I mean, there are certain parts, like the parking lot, which is part of the grant, and we would be leasing, there's no way we would want, at least I would never recommend that that become tax exempt. It's basically used primarily, not exclusively, but primarily for NOAA and for the Maritime Heritage Center. It's not a public parking lot per se, like the ones we have downtown. So I would say, you know, that remains taxable, just like the building is, even though it's used by NOAA, a government agency, they rent it from Jeff's company, whatever one that is, and it's taxable. And I don't know if that came up during your meeting. I know we've had some of that internally. I think you had said that was brought up at one time in some discussions. I'm not excited about necessarily doing that. Yes, he's losing, you know, he doesn't have control in the use of that property, but what's going on there adds value to everything else that he has. That we doesn't have development, that, you know, if he redevelops the mill, these improvements along the shore are nothing but assets and complementary to that generally. So that'll have to be a decision, I assume, by council as to whether or not they want to make that area tax exempt. And that would have to be a decision you make, if indeed he does ask for that.
And then it would ultimately go to tribunal if he didn't, like our.
Yeah, if we said no, he could, yeah, you can take it to the tribunal or whatever. But, yeah, that is something I think you need to know before you sign a grant agreement. I mean, it isn't something that, because if it goes tax tribunal, that could take months. And it's tough to ever get through. And then we may agree to everything and then find out, well, now we also have to tax exempt it. If we lost it, you know, if that went to tax tribunal and the decision went against us. Now, there's another thing that we want to have that in there. Again, I don't know what the dollars are. That's the first thing we'd have to do. We probably should go ahead and ask Alan, give him a rough, you know, a map of that area and say, can you give us a value of that?
Sure, good, we'll move in that direction.
So we have it at least in hand and see what kind of revenue we would lose if it did go tax exempt.
So what you need from us is a direction, correct?
Yes, that would be a positive start. Ultimately, we are kind of running out of time on this letter of intent. And if we don't secure the site control in the near future, I guess this becomes a non-conversation. But, so I would prefer some direction, because if it is, you know, if the city wants to maintain everything we've discussed, then that would be one thing. If there are elements of this that city feels they shouldn't or can't maintain for some reason, then we need to know that and find out if there is a party that can, and if that party is suitable. So if otherwise, there could be potentially either we can pull certain elements from the grant if MEDC and the community partners are amicable to that, or we allow this opportunity to pass and go try a smaller scale at a later date.
You probably don't have probably don't have an answer for this, but how much can be pulled from the plan before it gets small enough where they're not gonna approve it?
I'm not 100% sure. I think as far as the MEDC goes, they probably would be willing to work with us if there were elements that didn't work for whatever reason. I don't think there is a limitation for them. As far as community partners, as Greg indicated, there has been a lot of fundraising, and you know they've been shown the various improvements that were planned for, which included all the elements. So I don't know if they would consider, pulling back on their funding or reducing it if that was the case.
I'm not. And the reason I ask, I guess, part of it is that even from the meeting that we had, I'm not really overly thrilled about the control of the building. The building won't be a public structure. The amphitheater, the not gazebos, but pavilions. I see them being used. It's a nice location. People will come and use them, probably rent them as much as they do Starlight to get out of the wind and things they don't like about Starlight. I see that being used by anybody that fits into the calendar that's going to be established for scheduling. The building is not. If you and I want to store our boats that I don't have, we can't say, hey, next year can I store my boat in there? It's going to be whatever group or who controls it. And as the city, I'm not really thrilled about the thought that the city, which would probably fall on either Rich's scheduling or somebody's, that who gets to and who doesn't get to store their stuff in this building that we're maintaining with city taxpayers' money.
And if we're doing, especially with nonprofits, you may get those groups, like even the sailing club, I don't know what kind of funds they have. They may say, we don't have any funds to pay to do it. We figured maybe that would be, they'd be allowed to do it, without, at no cost or very minimal. So are you really getting anything worthwhile for, again, maintaining the upkeep of it? If there's, let's say, electricity and they're paying the utility bills, so on and so forth, and the insurance.
So I guess I'm just really not comfortable with the building. I wasn't in the meeting, and I don't know where it went. Jeff Gray indicated that Noah would be perhaps storing some stuff in there. The sailing club might be storing some things in there. Regardless, I guess, from my perspective only, I'm not comfortable with the city doing that, with city taxpayers' money. Playgrounds, sure, sculpture, I'm not sure what that is, but
Yeah.
Tim's
Yeah,
always
those
been
things I
great,
can
but-
see, I can see that, because I'm trying to step back from this and look at, okay, what does that area do for not only the city, but what does it draw people into the city and use it? So I can see some of the amenities there being used by our tourists. And the building, I'm glad you brought that up too, because we don't have control of it, and we're not saying who's going to lease it and who's going to store whatever in there, but we're going to be required to maintain it, and we've already got the property owner saying that he has no interest in maintaining that building.
I mean, we can put it back. I'm not, at that particular meeting, he wasn't. It's not to say that we can't counter proposal what we discussed, I guess, at the time. And then in the end, I mean, let's just take that for instance. And I'm not saying that you agree with me, but if you agree with me and we send Adam direction that says, we don't want anything to do with the building, nothing. Well, he takes that back to I'll call them the Jeffs, for lack of better terms.
Mm-hmm.
And the property owner, because he's the only other one that can take control of it for the grant. And if he says, okay, fine, then fine. And if he says no, well, then apparently that gets scratched from the grant.
I think that's
And
a good,
maybe-
that's a good provision myself.
And
That's my
what
opinion.
happened.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, that if you're gonna negotiate that and you've got authority to pull things off that you don't wanna maintain, then you should. And for me, for one, I agree with you. I'm not comfortable with that, so.
I do have to say, because at the end of the meeting, Jeff Konchak actually said that he would take on the building. He actually did at the end of it.
Okay.
He said, I'd take that on.
Okay.
The problem is that how do you make that binding?
That's directly in the grant. Because in the grant, the binding, whoever taken, Adam can correct me obviously if I'm wrong, but either the property owner or the city are the only two parties that can take control of.
But it has to be one or the other.
I-
It can't be a combination.
And I don't know if that's 100% accurate. Greg mentioned that potentially, NOAA or someone like that, being the federal agency, could potentially be others here. What the MEDC wants to see is that some organization or assigned party that's going to be here in 50 years.
It has some permanence.
And we don't know that NOAA is. I think that's probably one of the issues.
I mean, you could argue know of the administration, whether they're physically located there, know of the administration probably will, but I don't know that the MEDC would be willing to do that. Because, again, they have, I don't know how much left on their lease. They could potentially move, it's unlikely, but.
And I guess that's one of the things that bothers me. I'm certainly a very big supporter of NOAA. They've done tremendous for our community. But at the same time now, whether it's through NOAA, the Friends combination, probably the two together, they have taken on a very large project, but one that at the same time they're saying, well, the Friends group is really not, that's not their mission, that's not their thing. NOAA may be saying, well, we're not allowed to because of restrictions as us as a federal agency. So they're making all these plans, saying it's a great thing for the community, but somebody else is gonna be the one responsible. We'll come up with these plans, of which we weren't a part, and I just see it's all heading our way that, yeah, didn't we come up with all these neat, wonderful things? It's our master plan for around our facility, and of course, by the way, you're gonna be responsible for it. To me, that's somewhat presumptuous, and it's something that I think is asking a lot. I mean, without having us involved from, day one, moment one, and us saying, yes, we're willing to do this, or no, we're not willing to do that. That just is bothers me, because we're gonna see it with other groups who come up there with great ideas and then say, but, you're gonna have to be the applicant and it's gonna be yours. We knew when we built, even though we had partners with Trailhead, it was our project, we initiated it, we knew it was ours. Even Starlight Beach with the splash pad. Yeah, a big majority of the funding came from the Rotary and their efforts. But we knew it was gonna be ours. And that was the agreement from the beginning. We knew it from day one. And that it would be all ours. This did not evolve that way.
Right.
Until suddenly much later.
But here we are.
And that concerns me.
To speak
We're
to that,
still right here.
Yeah, to speak to that end, I don't think, NOAA was putting it together, putting together a general vision, but I don't think they thought this would come all at once either, so I can't necessarily, I'm hoping they would have worked with us as they developed the plan further, but at the same point, there wasn't time, the MEDC came forward and they did, so, but I certainly can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it was a deliberate thing on their part or anything
Sure.
else. It did morph very quickly into something much bigger than ever
Yeah, I
anticipated. But it's still, we have, it's all going in one direction, right towards us.
Well, so we're here to determine whether we're gonna take this on or not.
Other than the building, I don't have an issue with the other things. I don't know the play area, how that's gonna work out, if it's gonna get a lot of activity and stuff like that. If it's necessary in that particular area and how much it's gonna see. But there is other parks just up the path.
The nearest park that has anything, or the nearest recreation that has anything in resemblance of a playground, I'm assuming would be Lincoln School and then Lincoln Park,
Yeah.
which is quite some distance.
Yeah.
Well, to a certain extent. So it's not that I don't like the idea of a park being there. It's very visible.
And
Boys and Girls Club, right over by there too.
yeah.
Boys and Girls Club will be on the same side of the river, so at some point.
I don't have a problem with it. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the building kind of bothers me. Sorry. What's everybody else thinking?
When do you need to, I'm interested in Alan's perspective on the property, on the taxable value of the property, so we at least know what direction that's gonna take, what that's gonna cost in the event that they go that direction. Because that wasn't even discussed in our meeting. But I'm not gonna be surprised if that comes up.
Oh.
I would also like to know what our insurance, whether that's gonna, we have a lot of parks, so perhaps it's gonna be minuscule. But I would like to know what that additional cost is gonna be on our insurance.
He did call last week, and he said that the playground equipment would kind of fall under other structures. It's not really separated out in our current policy for the existing structures that we do have. And he had some questions, and I forwarded his call on to you, so I don't know
Okay.
what your discussion
I
was.
just got back in the office a few hours ago, so.
Oh, it was last week, though. It was like Wednesday, I think.
Oh, okay.
You didn't talk to him?
Mhm.
Oh. That's all I really have on that. I didn't get any solid numbers.
What is your date now? We're beyond the date that you wanted to have this done, I'm assuming.
We need, and I don't know if it's still feasible, so this conversation may be moot because we have been told we need to go through the permitting process before we can even go through an environmental review, which is another series of hearings. So ultimately, you know, the sooner we have the site control issue done, the better, in the fact that we could probably, if once we show that we have site control and we're moving the right direction, then we could potentially get an extension. But right now, we need to have everything wrapped up by the end of February.
If I may make a suggestion, from what I'm hearing with the council, if you're comfortable with basically taking on the entire project except perhaps the building with the issues that are there, we can between now and the next meeting, get any numbers we can get on insurance, try to get a number on what the value of that land is that we're going to be leasing from Allen, and then authorize, you know, staff to sit down and go back and say, this is what we're willing to do. You're gonna take care of the plowing, you're gonna take care of the mowing of all the grass, whether it's inside the easement, you know, whatever, everything within, including the existing, you know, easement that's there for the Heritage Trail. And you agree to all that, we will do this. Is that agreeable on? And if so, then we can put it in writing and then we'll just see what these other things. At least that keeps the thing moving.
Yeah.
Because I think at this point, we gotta be able to go back to them with a direction from council.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, until we sign the grant agreement in February, we can certainly, you know, change things. And even after we sign the grant agreement in February, if things don't work out, we can always pull the plug before, as long as it's before we spend considerable amounts of money. But before we spend the money to develop the final plan, before we start paying surveyors, and, you know, we need to basically just be at least somewhat familiar with where we're at as far as where the parties lie as far as the maintenance agreement. And I think we can work out smaller details later. For instance, the building, if it's not going to pan out, we can easily pull it or figure that out. As long as we know the city doesn't want to maintain it, that's fine. If someone else wants to step up, that's a possibility. But just knowing if we're roughly sure where we're at, I think we can make it work, and we can get you that other information. And if that changes the outlook, then we can cross that bridge over there. But
I have a question. Is that pool area secure, like from people just walking up there? It's a little concerning to me, being if it's going to be next to a playground with kids running around and.
They do have
Yeah.
kind of a gate, I think there's a gate on each end of it, which they close and lock, to keep people off the deck.
Okay.
I probably worry more about the river being right there myself, but
Yeah.
they do have a gate over it. I don't know how
But,
secure it is.
It's on both sides, but because there's access from both ends of the deck. And they do gate it off.
Okay.
I can be, you know, I'm okay with what Greg had suggested, if the rest of the council is too, is to, you know, direct staff to go back and, you know, negotiate the rest of that out, you know, what we discussed here.
I think it's fine. At least it gets us in that direction.
Yep.
So, the mowing, and we're talking about mowing from the trail out.
I think we're talking about any grass area within the grant area.
That's fine.
Because I think what we're gonna end up with is, as far as a new easement, or the easement, is gonna cover part what the old easement was. It's gonna supersede that one, because some of these improvements are going in that old easement.
Right.
So this new one is simply will include some of that. So if there's grass in the old easement, then that gets cut by Jeff.
Let's do that. mowing and.
And the plowing of the parking lot, he will, and any other maintenance of it, he would take care of.
And the building.
Okay, thank you.
In the building,
Appreciate it.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Thank you.
building we don't want either, so, just so you know that.
Okay, that helps me out.
Thank you,
That's
Adam.
what's-
Thanks, Adam. Do we need some action on that, sir?
I think the direction is probably good enough for
Yeah,
now.
Direction is fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we just get that information together.
All right, next up is the ambulance request for proposals or recommendation.
They can go put it in the park.
Good, so put it in the park. Good evening. Rob Edmonds, Tim Slosser, we're here from the fire department. We're here for the chief tonight. He's actually off on department business, so he wasn't able to attend. So you guys should have all received the information in your packet, but I'm going to read it to you as to what he's requesting at this time. On October 22nd, 2019, sealed proposals were opened by City Clerk, Treasurer, Finance Director Anna Soit, and Chief Forbush. In response to a request for proposals for the purchase of a new demo or remount ambulance for countywide ALS use. Proposals for 15 vehicles were received from several dealers and manufacturers. Unlike a sealed bid, our RFP allows the city to determine the best fit for our needs, with price being only one of the factors. The entire cost of the unit will be reimbursed through the county ambulance millage pursuant to our interlocal agreement. We've already purchased the cot and power load system to avoid a price increase on that equipment. The remaining budget for the ambulance is in the amount of $159,000. Of the 15 proposals, it's actually in your packet, there's 15 of them there. The one that was the most palatable to us is the one through Lifeline for $159,000, which is the one Chief is recommending at this time. Captain Tim Slosser coordinated the project and evaluated the proposals. In that there are new units available in our price range, we don't recommend a remount at this time. We plan to retire our 1991 backup unit. It is actually the oldest licensed transport ambulance in the state of Michigan right now. It is like an antique. Okay. When the new unit arrives, and we will reuse units, radios from that unit, it's our recommendation that we award the RFP to R&R Fire Truck Repair in the amount of $159,000 for the purchase of a new Lifeline Type 3 ambulance with funding from 101-336-974002. I believe that's a line item that he has, and subsequent reimbursement from Alpena County. And if you have any questions, I brought Tim.
Tim, we were speaking earlier, and could you inform the rest of the council what you're telling me about, we've got 15 different dealers here, but there's actually the manufacturers that are available. There's only, what, a couple?
Yeah, over the last few years, Rev Group is called, is bought most of the ambulance lines up. It's kind of like, General Motors owns, Chevy, Buick, Pontiac, whatever. Rev Group does that. We've experienced some problems with some of the Rev Group ambulances. Some of their quality has dropped. Some of their services have dropped down. So Lifeline is still out on their own. That's one of the things that put them up over the group. They were all within our area of what we asked for. I know you mentioned what did we ask for.
Yep.
We asked for the length of the size of our box. So, we wanted 72-inch headroom, 170 inches long, type of chassis, gas. Ford was preferred over Chevy. Roz likes to work on the Ford's better, and we only have one Chevy right now, so going from truck to truck is a little confusing when they're different. And Lifeline met that. We've worked with, the salesman's name is Al D'Agostino. We've worked with Al on other projects, and R&R has been really receptive to us and worked well with us. So we're confident going forward with him and what we're doing.
What is the not the age of this one comparatively, but what is the expected life expectancy of a unit like this? Usually about 10 years?
8 to 10 years is what, it used to be we replaced one every 2 years because this is one of the county ambulances, but they've been kind of extending that out a little bit. We'll go about 8 to 10 years on it. The one we're retiring right now, not retiring, that we'll take one out of frontline service and replace the 91, which is a backup truck, is a 2012. So it's 7 years.
Yeah, and I think under the new contract, they've got more of a scheduled ambulance replacement from what it was the last one, where I think we only did one in 5 years.
Correct.
And I think this one has two planned.
Yep.
And that contract, I think, is only to get through I think just until the
Till the-
millage,
Yep, till the millage comes up.
comes up in next year.
Next year.
So,
And this truck, we can have in 30 to 45 days.
Which, yeah, you were telling me that earlier, that's very unusual. What is the typical build, Ben, on one of these units?
9 months.
About 9
Well,
months?
it depends. See, you can buy companies have stock trucks, so they run them down a production line, they set them out in the parking lot. When you wanna buy them, they'll paint them to match, they'll sticker them to match, and they'll send them up. That's what this truck is. This truck is a stock, they call it a demo. A dealer in Indiana's had the truck for the last year or so. It doesn't have a lot, I'm not sure the miles, but I know it hasn't traveled a lot. So it's ready for us right now. What we've done in the past is we put out a set of specs. We want this cabinet this size, this color light here, this color trim, and then they have to build it. And that'll be, 9 months, sometimes up to a year to get a truck that we do that with. This one's ready to go. We talked to them. I guess Bill missed getting the info in for the last, was past the cutoff to get into the last meeting. So the dealer knows that we're looking to award it to him. The truck is available. He's holding it. He's told us it'll be 30 to 45 days to get it once he has the approval.
No other questions, sir? I move we award the RFP to R&R Truck Repair in the amount of $159,000 for the purchase of a new Lifeline Type 3 ambulance.
Second.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Walagora? Hess?
Yes.
And Johnson? Motion carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pass it on to the chief. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I move we adjourn.